This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Eldorado Gaming. Eldorado Gaming is your site for gifts and gaming accessories like dice, playmats, and other items to bling out your games. Use the promo code META for 10% off your order. Find us on YouTube at Eldorado Gaming TX or our home site at eldoradogaming.com. Here at My Mythical Meta, we talk about gaming with friends and strangers, resolving conflicts, and keeping game nights fun, interesting, and recurring. Our game of choice is Magic the Gathering, but our hope is that what we share is relevant for board gamers, RPG groups, video gamers, and maybe even your poker night. I'm Travis, and with my brother Benjamin and my friends Derek and Randy, we've been playing Magic together since 2014. The secret to a healthy meta is not in the game you play, it's being good friends. Subscribe to My Mythical Meta, presented by Eldorado Gaming, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to My Mythical Meta. The entire crew is here. No absences, perfect attendance. Finally, everyone is here. I've got my brother Benjamin.
Hello.
I've got my two best friends. I have Derek.
Hey.
And Randy.
Howdy.
Everyone is here, finally, thank God. No schedule conflicts. We are finally able to have a full run, especially with Benjamin back on the words of wisdom. Derek, you've been officially fired.
That's all right. I like to...
Only from the words of wisdom, though.
I'm going to do it anyways.
All right, keep it in. Keeping your words of wisdom in. I like it. It keeps this pod interesting. And that is actually our topic today, is keeping it interesting. As I've said many times before, our game of choice is Magic the Gathering. And we have been playing Magic for many years, almost a decade. We started playing together in around 2014 or 15. And it being the year 2023, we've been playing for a very long time. And it's crazy that we can play one game over this long period of time. Can you guys think of anything else that you've done for as long as you've played Magic?
If we just say video games in general.
Okay, but is there
not a single game?
Is there any specific or single game that or hobby that you've done for as long as you've played Magic?
I think Pokemon might be the closest. You and I had a long stretch, and if I count all the years up, it might be close.
I was thinking the same thing. Pokemon for me. Dragon Age might be another game that I've consistently gone back to many times over the years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like I have a year-long break in between some playthroughs and stuff.
For me, it's fantasy baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I started that my first year of college. I took 2 years off in law school because I just couldn't keep up. But then since graduating law school in 2011, I've been playing pretty consistently since then. So that's the main one.
Randy, how about you?
I think for me, the closest would be D&D, since playing with y'all in high school.
Oh, yeah. I suppose
That's
it's
true.
true.
It is one of those things where every group is kind of like a new game, so I can kind of see how it's maybe a little different, but tabletop RPGs in general.
For sure, I get that.
I guess if you're going to say in general, board gaming has been a big hobby of mine since childhood till now. And I've got a pretty extensive collection of interesting games that I try to get people to play, and I know of a lot more. So that's certainly a big part of it too. Gaming in many forms, board games, Magic, fantasy baseball, just what I do.
Yeah. Our topic is about keeping a single game interesting for a long period of time. When games are very well established, they can get into a rut, especially if one group is playing the same game over and over and over again. Now, playing the same game with, for example, Magic, the same decks over and over again, or the same armies, or the same lists, or the same characters, those games can get boring. And game creators know this. It's their job to have players continue coming back all the time and pouring in the minutes and hours into their game. And so modern game creators will build in lots and lots of ways to play their game. Lots of varieties around the same base game.
We can start with our main game, which is Magic the Gathering. They, just right now off the top of my head, they of course have Standard, which is the most recent sets. They have Historic, they have Brawl, they have Drafting, they have Two-Headed Giant, they have Sealed, They have Modern and Legacy and Vintage.
And Pioneer.
Oh, yep, they have Pioneer. They have, what was that one we tried with the Planeswalker? Oh, Oathbreaker.
Oathbreaker. Yep,
Yep.
that's right.
And of course, our version is EDH or Commander. So they have so many different ways to play their game that if you really do get bored with one, you could say, well, let's try a different version and see what that's like.
Right. Game creators want you to keep spending money on their product no matter how you play it. And so if you don't like one version of their game, you can buy something else. Or you can get into a different way.
Back when I used to play League of Legends, so they had the base 3-lane map, 5v5, and then they came out with a smaller one, like Twisted Tree Line. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Twisted Tree Line was 3v3.
Yeah. And then after that, it was just a mod that they were using in Warcraft 3. Or I think that's how League of Legends started in general.
Yeah.
But then people
Yeah.
did all random, all mid on the main map. And so
Yeah.
Riot, the company that makes League of Legends, they actually made a map for that's all random characters, just one lane where it's just, slugging it out.
Yeah, one central lane where it's nothing but team fights, basically.
Yeah. Since then, they've come out with, I don't know what they've done in the last few years, but they had like Earth, which is ultra rapid fire.
That's right. Yeah, so all of the abilities have super low cooldown.
Yeah, so it's just going crazy, going stupid. Arena, I think there was like a central wheel or something like that 5v5, or maybe it was like 5v5v5 or something.
I think it's 2v2v2v2.
Oh, okay.
I think it's 8 players and it's 4 teams of 2.
Yeah, so that's what I can think of off the top of my head with League of Legends.
Like I said, for me, D&D, there's always, of course, new editions, but also they're putting out, I feel like monthly now. I feel like they're putting out a new book, and, that keeps it fresh by introducing new races, new class features, even like adventure ideas, for DMs and stuff like that to use in their games.
Yeah, magic items, maps.
Book of Dragons.
Yeah, new creatures.
Yeah.
The couple that come to my head are the Nintendo games, Super Smash Bros. And Mario Kart. Even in the very first edition of Super Smash Bros., there were multiple ways to play. You could play with stock, where everyone has a certain number of lives and it's the last one standing. Or you could play time, where it was a timed match and you won by getting the most KOs during that time. Super Smash Bros. Also has variations in team versus solo play. So you can have it be a free-for-all where everyone's on their own, or you can have people assigned to teams. This is also a fun way to moderate the meta, because if you have one player who's really, really good and the other players are introduction level, then you could even do 1v3. You can change the sizes of your teams if you want to also. There were also lots of modifiers like item select, launch distance modifiers. I think there were fast, slow-mo, metal, bunny hood. There were just tons of different ways to play the core game of Smash Brothers. The same is true in Mario Kart. There are all of the different courses are ways to keep it interesting. You can do the programmed Grand Prix where they've chosen 4 courses that go together, or you can freestyle it and choose your own 4 courses to go together. You can do team and solo races. You can modify which items show up in each race. And Mario Kart has its battle modes, and those have been in place since the very first iteration of the game as well. Just a battle map where instead of a course, instead of a track, instead it's an arena, which is all about trying to test each player's mastery of certain items, like green shells, stars, red shells, banana peels, etc. When game creators are making a game, they want you to sink as many hours into as possible, and so they're going to create many different modes of play. That way, when you get bored with one thing, you'll stay in the game, but switch to something else. They want to keep their game interesting by providing options. Another way to keep players in the game is to constantly release new content. They'll keep their game interesting by adding new things, kind of creating that little hamster drip where you always want to come back to it to see what has changed. I think one of the most common ways to do this is releasing new characters in video games, especially fighting games or any arena game. But Smash Brothers did this for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on the Switch for a period of 3 years. They had waves of new characters being made available. League of Legends does this. You guys mentioned in the last episode your game Marvel Strike Force and Gundam Breaker Mobile, how they would constantly release new suits or new characters or new superheroes that constantly get people coming back into the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's how they sell us new Pokemon games. They give us 80 new Pokemon every time.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what Pokemon is. It's all about the characters. The only reason to buy a new game is to see what new characters, what new creatures have been created for the same core game.
Yeah.
In Warhammer 40k and other tabletop games, always putting out a new faction, putting out some new figurines for people to collect, and then, of course, build and paint and keep your time involved in that hobby.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of games do it. Star Wars Legion and X-Wing.
Something y'all had talked about last episode was about spending money in order to get powerful units.
Yeah.
In order to get powerful cards. And I was thinking about the last couple of years when Warhammer 40k started releasing specific figures for all of the main Primarchs.
Yeah.
And like, if you're not into Warhammer 40k, that won't mean a lot, but the idea that at the head of each of these armies is one Ubermensch, one superhuman creature or man that embodies all the ideals of that faction. So
That's cool.
I played Death Guard, which is a Chaos Space Marine faction that's all about decay and disease and pestilence and rotting, and they came out with Mortarion. He is the Primarch of the Death Guard. And of course, this is a $200 figure.
Good
it's
lord.
12 inches high. It's got gigantic wings. And of course, all of its abilities reflect that. It's super powerful, super resilient, spreads disease. It does all of the things that the faction does. And it's things like that that are going to keep people coming in to Warhammer.
Yeah, something similar is in the board gaming area. You have expansion packs and variations and stuff like that to keep people playing a game. I think you mentioned Pandemic earlier, but if you didn't, Pandemic does this a lot, right? There's
A ton.
so
Yeah.
many versions of Pandemic. You have, of course, all your legacy games. You have Pandemic on the Brink, State of Emergency, In the Lab, Hot Zone. I think one year you got me
Rapid response.
Yeah, Pandemic Rapid Response. They have Fall of Rome. They have Iberia. Just so many variations of the same core rules, but with enough variation to get people interested in, hey, let's add this thing, let's try this. And I have several different games here with different variations. So I have Legends of Andor, and I have a Legends of Andor expansion pack. I have Successors 2nd edition and Successors 3rd edition. I have Axis and Allies. I have Axis and Allies and Zombies. I have
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Did you give me that one too?
Yeah, I got you Axis and Allies and Zombies.
Yeah.
I'm looking on my shelf at Settlers of Catan. I have Settlers of Catan Cities and Knights.
Yep.
And then I have another one called Traders and Barbarians.
There should be a Seafarers. I don't know if you have that one, but
I don't have that one, but
Yeah.
I know that it exists.
and of course there's a bazillion versions of Monopoly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all of these things keep a game interesting. If I like the core thing, then I might like it with one additional added rule or one little additional figure. Video games do expansion packs also, downloadable content or mods. They add in another adventure, or they add in new equipment or new armor. Something that's kind of topical right now is that Cyberpunk 2077 just came out with patch 2.0, which had a complete overhaul of all the skill trees and perks, and a new expansion called Phantom Liberty, which contains a new region of Night City, an entirely new district to explore, as well as an entire new storyline with new characters, and one of them is acted and voiced by Idris Elba.
Oh, cool.
Cyberpunk 2077, that's a 3-year-old game. It came out in the year 2020.
2019.
So 2019, is that
December
right?
2019.
December 2019. So yeah, this is a almost 4-year-old game. And right now, it's dominating the video game news cycle, going toe-to-toe with games like Starfield and Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
And they did that through the downloadable content, through their patches, and through the Phantom Liberty expansion pack.
I mean, with patch 2.0, it's almost like a brand new game.
It is almost a brand new
And
game. Yeah, a lot of menus have changed, and there are entire gameplay overhauls within
Yeah,
it.
I've seen a lot of screenshots people have taken online. I mean, it looks like one of the best games. Like, visually looks like one of the best games ever made. Just getting completely lost and immersed.
Yeah, and it's just constant updates. It's a game that has had constant work on it for the last 3 years. They never stopped upgrading its visual graphics. They never stopped upgrading police AI or gang AI. Because the developers keep investing in it and making changes and improvements, people are going to continue coming back to the game. Even in the last year, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on Switch has I forget what they're calling it, but it's an online pass where every couple of months they come out with a new Grand Prix. So 4 new courses. I think most of them are throwback courses. So courses from Nintendo DS or courses from Double Dash on GameCube and things like that. But these keep people coming back also. And then, of course, there's our game Magic, which is just constantly releasing new cards. We always come back to the game. We always buy more packs because they're going to have new cards. And if those new cards are powerful with a new effect, then we're going to want to add them to our decks.
Yeah, and some people might argue they've been doing it a bit too much lately, but
Yeah.
it's been hard to keep up the last couple years, I'll be honest.
Oh yeah, I agree. And it's hard for trading card games, I think, to keep people coming back without power creeping. And I think Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh have major power creep problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those power creep problems started early in the development of those games. Do think Magic has developed a power creep problem, but if it comes 20 years into the game, then at least they did a little better.
Yeah, anytime I ever see Yu-Gi-Oh gameplay, it's if your deck wants to go first and it goes second, you lose. If your deck wants to go second
seen
and you
that.
go second, you win, Or if you want to go first, you go first, you win. It is like,
Yeah.
it's like they pop off instantly.
Yeah.
There is no back and forth.
Crazy. Yeah, there's no back and forth like when we were young playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Of like steadily chewing down the opponent's life points. It's like, nope, it's all going to happen in one turn or not. These are the things that game creators do in order to keep people coming back to their game and investing hours and hours and hours into it. But when games get really, really big and when metas become very well established, usually over the course of time, players will also create their own ways to play. This next section is about what players do to keep games interesting.
I think an interesting one is in Pokemon. I haven't really played Pokemon since like 2nd or 3rd generation, but I always like to watch content involving the Nuzlocke challenge, which if you don't know, if you're not into Pokemon, this is a way where it makes the game a lot harder. When you go into a new region, you can only catch the first Pokemon that you find there, and if you don't catch that one, you don't get another chance to catch one in that region. And then if your Pokemon ever faints, then it's gone forever. You have to release it. It's like it's dead. So you have to be really careful about going up against powerful Pokemon. If you know that there's going to be a hard trainer battle or something like that, you will grind and grind and grind so that your Pokemon can take it without dying. And it makes the game not only harder, but really forces you to understand strategy. It forces you to take the game a lot more seriously because Pokemon, it's a fun game. Your first playthrough, you'll learn it. There's no punishment for not doing well. And you can really take advantage of the fact that the computer players, the NPCs, they're kind of dumb. They're all one-trick ponies and all of that. But the Nuzlocke challenge really puts you in the position where you only have a select few Pokemon to work with, and you cannot risk them.
Yeah, it adds stakes.
Yeah, it adds stakes. It makes the game interesting. I've done it a few times on older versions. I think it's Pokemon Crystal I do this with.
Me too. I've done a few Nuzlocks. It's always on older versions after I've played through the game once.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it for my very first playthrough of a game because you don't know when the super hard gym leader is going to show up and just cause you to black out because you got nobody left.
Yeah.
That's been my favorite variation of things players have come up with to just completely change how a game is played and make it new and interesting again.
My thought is, think about, playing cards. 52 playing cards. How many different games are there?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Derek, that is such an awesome point.
Like poker, solitaire, free space, spider solitaire,
spoons.
Yeah, peanut
speed.
butter.
war, battle.
Yep. Just all the that's brilliant. Just there's so many.
That's that's the best example that I could think of.
52 game pieces, 1,000 different games.
Yeah.
And then you start playing with 2 and 3 decks, and you have hand and foot like we played.
Canasta.
You add a board, and now you're playing sequence.
Oh, canasta. I haven't heard that in like 20 years.
My wife's family loves to play canasta, so
Oh man, my girl
yeah.
would play that all the time.
Derek, that's great. That's a great
Thank
example.
you.
Something that we did in high school with Smash Brothers was changing the item select to only Pokeballs. So it's like, okay, we're doing a Pokemon challenge. Whoever gets lucky and throws out the best Pokemon from all the random Pokeballs. But Benjamin, you talked about playing Smash Brothers with your debate team, and they decided to do Snake only. So just all players playing the same character and seeing who's better with that one particular character. Rockets, bombs, the airdrop helicopter thing. So players will figure out ways to make their game interesting if it's not interesting enough. Again, I think this only really happens when games get really big and the metas are very well established.
Right. Yeah.
And the format that we are most familiar with is the Commander format in Magic the Gathering. This is a format that is officially supported by Wizards of the Coast now, but that's not how it began. It was first known as Elder Dragon Highlander, and it was a format created by judges to play during waiting time in tournaments. This was just players creating this format. And that's why the subreddit we always go to is called EDH, Elder Dragon Highlander, because that's the name that these players gave it, and Wizards officially calls it Commander. In our own small meta, the four of us, we have created a couple of ways to keep our games interesting as well. Over the course of our sessions, over the course of our meetings, most of our games are just normal, 4-player, free-for-all. Each person has built their deck, and we just want to see who wins that night. Most of it is normal gameplay. But in our meta, we have done a few things that keep the game interesting for us as well. We have two main things. We will do a Secret Santa Commander deck each year where we draw a person's name randomly, and then we make that person a budget Commander deck with a price limit of $50. And we also do deck building challenges where we will say to the entire group, okay, you all have to build a deck using these restrictions. And then with just those restrictions, or just Secret Santa, we will come to that next session, or whatever session we've scheduled in the future. We'll come to those games and play with those decks. Let's talk about Secret Santa first.
Year one was an interesting experience where we had never made decks for each other before. It was kind of a new idea. Was it you who came up with it, Travis? Were you the one who suggested it?
I don't remember.
It was popular on our EDH on Reddit.
Yeah,
and
it was
then,
popular on Reddit because I think there might have been a Secret Santa through Reddit.
Yeah, there
I
was.
think
where
you're
you would
right.
get a user's
Yeah.
name or something.
I remember
and
that
make,
now.
and make those people decks or something like that.
Yeah, okay. You're right. I remember that. We looked at that and said, hey, that'd be a great idea. And so the year one, we did that. That would have been 6 years ago now. Wow. Yeah, right after I moved back to Houston, or the year after that. And it was real interesting. So we picked something random, and I think we all kind of said, all right, we're going to make something for this person that really reflects something they don't do very often. So I remember the deck that was made for me was made by Derek, and that was Mael of the Anima. And I still have it, and it was a $50 budget deck, so I've upgraded it a little bit, but I still have it in spirit. When it goes off, it can go off, but he was basically, at the time, thinking, man, Ben always plays these control decks, and Ben always plays these grindy decks. I want him to play big monsters and smash into people.
Yeah.
That was fun. And then the deck I made for Randy that year, I was thinking, man, Randy always plays very slowly. So I'm going to give him a deck where he has nothing to do on his turn so that he plays the land and passes. And so I made him a deck where every single card could be played at instant speed on someone else's turn.
Who's that? Surek Dragonclaw?
Yep. So a nice 3-color deck where all the ramp is instant speed. Most of the mana rocks are instant speed. All the creatures have flash. And it's just, play your land, pass the turn, and maybe we can speed things up. I think I've mentioned before, it didn't really work out as planned.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Travis
Travis made me Vivictus Asmati.
Oh, yeah.
Jun.
That's right.
I've upgraded that several times, turned it into Corval, then I doubled down on the permanent only thing and trying to get that real big Primal Surge victory. And right before I was about to take that deck apart, I won with it.
I remember that.
Yeah. Oh, that was a great day. That was like 5 years ago, so or maybe like 3-4
Yeah.
years ago. And then now it is
Well, it's Hinsey, right?
Yeah, Hinsey.
Yeah, your Hinsey deck's really good. I didn't realize it was the same deck, basically.
It's different. I've put bigger, better stuff in
It's
it.
very different now, yeah. When it was Vivictus Asmati, there was a lot of Saproling support.
Yeah.
Just the idea that at any given time, you could sack a Saproling and not lose anything. Meanwhile, Vivictus is going to make all your opponents sacrifice something big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what I tried to capitalize with Corval to feed his ability or whatever, but it couldn't keep up. And then I kind of keep the same kind of idea where I want to sacrifice stuff with Hinsey, but now it's everything and there's no consequences. Nothing matters. Embrace nihilism.
Right.
Randy's first Secret Santa deck for me was Daxos the Returned.
Oh, I didn't remember because I've been thinking about your
Yes.
Daxos deck. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that was Randy's first Secret Santa deck for me. It has been upgraded, but honestly, not by a lot. I added in just a couple of enchantment support and some card draw support, so things like Necropotence I added in. There is one card called Flickering Ward, where it costs 1 to play, and it's an enchantment that gives a creature protection from a color, but you can also pay 1 white to return it to hand. So you can play it, return it to hand, play it, return it to hand, play it, return it to hand. It's kind of like a mana sink that can just get your experience count up really high. So it has been upgraded, but not by a ton, and it is still a really, really fun deck.
Yeah, I'm glad we started with year one and have pointed out how all of us still basically have these decks. They've been surprisingly resilient, considering that they all started on a $50 budget.
Yeah.
And this was a long time ago when we basically weren't as good of deck builders as we are now.
Yeah.
So we kind of tweak them over time to make them better, but we still hold on to those decks that other people made for us. And playing a surprise deck that you didn't build yourself is a really fun way to switch things up a
A
bit.
really fun way to switch things up and to learn.
Let me tell you all the wacky little Rube Goldberg machine that Benjamin made for me year 2. It is a Joda deck, 5-color Joda. This is the old Joda. There are no lands in the deck. Dominaria United?
Do you mean Zendikar?
Zendikar, yeah.
Yeah, it was Zendikar.
Had like flip cards. It's like Zendikar.
Zendikar Rising.
Yeah, it was a dumb set. Hot take. That's why we don't get sponsored now. They had flip cards, and on the back side were lands, but because the front side is like creatures or spells or something, there aren't any lands in the deck technically. So it wins by using Goblin Charbelcher.
Yep.
That's right.
Do you know that off the top of your head what that does?
Yes, when you activate it, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card, and it does that much damage to any target. Or if it revealed a mountain, it deals double that damage. Well, there's no land, so it's going to reveal your whole deck, and you'll do that much damage. So these are 100 cards decks. It'll do, say, 80,
Yeah, 80 damage.
Yeah, and then it says put the revealed cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. Since you've just revealed your whole deck, you basically get to decide what the next few cards you draw are, and you can get ready to activate it again next turn. So you can always choose what the next card that you draw is on top of dealing 80 damage every time you activate
I still have the deck. It does nothing until it wins.
it. Right.
It's insane.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it.
And even with everybody like playing as hard as they can, if they can't deal 40 damage to you in the first 3 to 4 turns, then you can win.
Yep.
Pretty amazing.
I think that's the year that Randy made me
Yes.
Rogak and Arden deck,
Yeah.
which we've mentioned
Yeah.
several times on this podcast, being one of the major boogeymen of the format, because it's hyper aggressive, all these artifact equipments that just power up these really small evasive creatures, and they just come in and smack you real quick for 21 commander damage. And once again, if you don't get set up real fast to take care of it, you're dead. And Randy built that, and it was funny because, well, I'll let Randy tell this story about when they were practicing their deck before he gave it to me.
If I remember correctly, I believe I went over to your place, correct, Derek? And we were kind of testing out these decks.
I don't remember the story.
He blocked it from his
I
memory.
must have.
I thought we went over to your apartment
Yes.
and we were playing one-on-one, and you were like,
So Derek, you had made me a Leela Artful Provocateur that year.
Okay.
yeah, you were really confident and you were like, "This deck's
Okay,
gonna
wait.
man,
This is
deck's
starting to
gonna
sound.
hit."
This starting to sound familiar.
I was like, "This is just Boros," and everyone always craps all over Boros.
Yeah.
And then it was like turn 4, and
It just came
Boy,
over,
I'm
came
smacking
off
the
the card and
face.
broke my neck.
pretty much, it hit fast.
Yeah,
I was really.
It's just artifact ramp and artifacts to soup up your creature, which comes out turn 1, and so that makes them just like, all right, turn 2, I'm hitting you, commander damage. Let's get this lethal going.
Yeah, and this was part of y'all's long-standing rivalry because I remember a detail of that story because you were so happy because Derek was like, "Oh yeah, I made this really great deck and it's gonna totally
It
destroy
was
you.
good.
I'm gonna totally
It is.
destroy your
It's
little
good at
Boros."
$50.
Your deck was better in a 4-player environment when it had a little more time.
Yes, yeah.
My deck is like 1-on-1, you're the only target, you're dead.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you were bragging to Randy about how you were gonna just crush him, and then he pulls out his little Boros deck that he made for me.
Yeah.
Smashed
This
you.
is when you put in someone call an ambulance, but not for me.
We got 3 of the 4 decks. What was the last one that year?
Derek had made me Alila, Artful Provocateur with Fairies. You had made Derek Joda. I think that year I made Randy,
Oh yeah,
Alesha, who smiles at
Yeah.
death.
That deck still does work.
and
Yep,
Arjun.
still have it.
And that same year was the first time I did a birthday deck with Arjun the Shifting
Right,
Flame.
yeah.
Which I love.
That year I gave Randy 2
Yep.
decks. And I'm glad you made us stop to talk about these. We had gotten into a meta notice. Just something that I had noticed about Randy was that he hated discarding cards. Anytime an ability either required him to discard cards or anytime he was at maximum hand size, he would say, "Nah, I wish I didn't draw 2 more cards because now I have to discard." And I kept trying to tell him, like, "No, your graveyard is good. You can use it. It is okay to discard cards."
Also good to have more options. Just because you have 7 cards doesn't mean you don't want to see 2 more.
Yeah, I've learned since
Exactly.
then.
You always want to see 2 more. You always want to see as many cards as you can, even if you do have a maximum hand size of 7, because it means you get to pick the best 7.
Yeah, that's what I've kind of come around to is, yeah, I have a good 7. I could have a better set of 7.
Yes, there's
Yeah.
always a better 7. So Alesha wanted to teach him, or
Sacrificing
my goal with
creatures.
Alesha was that it's okay to have your creatures in the graveyard because there are cards that enable you to use them and to get them back. And things like that. So there are lots of cards in Alesha that ask him to discard his own cards or ask him to sacrifice his own creatures so that he can use them from the graveyard. And the purpose of Arjun was, of course, draw as many cards as you can, because Arjun's ability says every time you cast a spell, you take all the other cards in your hand and you put them on the bottom and draw that many. The lesson here was that no card is permanent, your hand doesn't matter, what matters is drawing and always seeing the next best set.
Yep.
And that was a really fun year.
And I think that the Alesha deck eventually led me to my Marchesa deck because it's all about using my graveyard. It's still classic Randy of I want to attack and hit you in the face without consequences, but now I
Sure.
just get my stuff back.
That's cool that you spotted that, Randy. I hadn't noticed that evolution for you, and it's really cool because Marchesa is an insanely powerful deck.
And I'm liking that we see this trend here of we started off with our gifts as trying to teach the other players in our meta certain strategies or trying to get them out of their shell. Like all of us were doing this really early on. And I think that's a cool part of our meta about how we were able to shift the meta and try new things by creating this challenge where we say, hey, you don't have this sort of deck and you don't play this sort of style. But when I give you this, now you do have this sort of deck, and at least a few times you're going to play that sort of style, and it's going to change the meta.
Yeah, and it's going to make all of us better players. So that brings us to year 3, and this was the first time that we had added in a new deck building rule. Both year 1 and year 2 were random people with no special rules. In year 3, we knew who the last person was. There are only 3 other people in our meta, so if we had done one random person and then a second person, well, now there's only one person left. And this time we did an added rule that any legendary creature at uncommon rarity could be treated as if it had partner. It didn't matter if it actually had partner or not. Any legendary creature that had been printed at uncommon, those creatures could be treated as if they had partner for the purpose of this deck. And those were some wild decks.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun building that too, because when you have a support card that can support your commander, it suddenly changes things. It made it kind of like Oathbreaker, where you could reliably hit both a commander and a spell to go with it. Or at least that's how I treated this challenge. I was like, hey, I know what my main goal is, but here's another card that just totally backs up what I'm doing. And I thought it was a lot of fun to build that way.
Yeah. Benjamin made me a deck with Vega, the Watcher, and Benjamin, was it Siani or Eligeth?
I think it was Eligeth.
Okay.
Yeah. So the idea was that Vega draws cards
when you play cards from exile.
Yeah, when you play cards from exile, and then Eligeth draws cards when you scry. The reason for that is I think there were just a lot of cards that just so happened to put cards in exile or things like that that also just randomly scried one.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And so I was like, look, you're going to have a bunch of cards, and then you're going to have a bunch of more cards, and you're not going to be able to stop it. And that was just a really fun deck in general for me to make, because I had to think of a lot of unique ways to get you to play cards from places other than your hand.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of fun making it, putting in all the stuff with Suspend and
Cascade, Foretell, and all the other stuff.
Exactly.
Randy made Derek, Hamza, and Slurk.
No, it's Slurk.
Listen, it's green-white +1/+1 counters, but hot damn, that deck was a truck.
Yeah.
Language.
And I'll tell you, I saw Hamza many times just by itself as an uncommon commander and just kept thinking, man, this guy's just not any good. But wow, being able to get him out once you've already done a little bit of your plan and then having him just totally blows the rest of your deck up in power.
Do you still have that, Hamza and Slurk?
Yes and no. I do still have it, but I am currently in the process of upgrading it.
Okay, I thought you were going to say tearing it apart. No!
I am putting it through an actual shredder.
I no longer have Vega and Eligeth, but that's because I used Vega in a different deck building challenge that we'll get to a little bit later.
Okay.
Yeah. Derek, you made Randy, Sir Conrad, and Ghost of Ramirez de Pietro.
Yeah, so Randy never plays blue. At this point, rarely played black. So I just thought it'd be fun to make him do stuff, play out of the graveyard. I can't remember exactly how the deck was supposed to work. It's like get cards into your graveyard, then get them back out, and just kind of play with Sir Conrad over and over with the graveyard.
Right.
And then to make it a legal deck, I just switch Sir Conrad with Tormod, the Desecrator. I mean, it's not as fun, but a similar thing to keep it kind of working the same way.
Yeah, still very good either way. The deck that I made that year was Arami of the Dead Tide and Quintorius
Field Historian.
Field Historian. That's his name.
And that one I thought was probably the most clever of all of these. Like, the Vega Eligeth deck was basically just a Vega deck with some added support. Hamza and Slurk were green-white +1/+1 counters. Conrad and Ramirez de Pietro were, the typical graveyard shenanigans in and out. But what I loved about Arami and Quintorius is that Quintorius provided some really interesting support for Arami, because Arami forces you to exile cards from your graveyard in order to do something, and then Quintorius makes tokens whenever a card leaves your graveyard, and so it stopped being a cost. Oh, so Arami gives the creature Encore. So you get to pull a creature out of your graveyard, and you get 2 copies of it in addition to that creature, and then they all attack a different opponent. So basically, you can pull something out of your graveyard, get 3 of them, but in order to do that, you had to exile cards from your graveyard as a cost. Well, Quintorius would give you a token for each of those cards.
Yeah, he would give you a spirit token for each one.
Yeah, and so suddenly, if you get those 2 out and something to reanimate from the graveyard, it's like instant board state, where you get 3 creatures for the creature you got out, plus another 3 creatures for the cards that you exiled, and then, boom, you go in and...
And the creatures that I used to kind of populate the deck were allies, which all benefit from the number of allies you have on the board.
Right, so when one of them came out, well, actually 3 of them came out, and they all pumped each other.
Yeah. It was a very, very fun deck. I'm very proud of myself for it.
I will admit that I scavenged that for a bunch of cards.
That's okay.
I do want to go back and recreate Arami.
Well, some of these decks that we build that have special build rules, we don't normally play them very often.
Right.
And it's for the reason that they technically have broken a rule,
Yeah.
and their power is going to be different than other decks made for the format. So we usually would only play them against each other or in our own small group. We don't usually bring them to play with strangers or anything like that.
Yeah.
We did this year 4, and this was a start over cycle with no special rules. We started over with a new random person and had no special building rules. This was last year's Christmas, and I made Benjamin John Irenicus.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, I really liked that deck. It was a lot of fun to build.
Yeah, I'm still working on just some small tweaks here and there, but when it comes back, it's going to be even better. A monster.
Oh no.
Y'all, you will
Oh,
rue the
no.
day. Because I loved the concept of I'm going to give my opponents creatures that they have to attack each other with, and I get a benefit every time they do, and it's so diabolical.
Yeah, and you always want to give them a bad creature.
Right, exactly.
A creature that has some terrible drawback to it.
And I just love that. Like, why would I ever play this? Oh, so I can give it to you. And that just,
Yeah.
it's awesome. The one thing that I was trying to change is like, okay, well, everybody else gets to play their stuff like normal usually. And then if you're giving away all your creatures, you were left defenseless. And I hate
Yeah.
being defenseless. Like, I think I've mentioned that
I
before.
know.
So I'm adding ways to make it work out. And I think it's going to be great. Okay, yeah. And then I made for Travis, dang, what's his name? The turtle jump.
Archelaus.
Archelaus says that when it's tapped, everything comes into play tapped, and when it's untapped, everything comes into play untapped. So there are lots of things, especially lands, that come into play tapped for balance reasons, because they would be totally broken if they came into play untapped. And he says, well, I'm going to let them come into play untapped and let you bounce stuff over and over. I don't think we ever got it to pop off in a game.
Yeah, not yet. I'm going to power it up with some tutors.
Yeah, I think that'll help.
I have both a demonic and a vampiric tutor that I'm just going to throw in that deck.
Nice.
That way I can start getting the combos
Yeah.
off.
Derek, what did you make?
I made Volo Guide the Monsters.
Oh, yeah.
He says
For Randy.
Yes, yeah, for Randy. So one thing that Randy likes to do is play with tokens. So I said, okay, I'm going to give you tokens, but I'm going to do it my way and my colors. So Volo says when you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, copy that spell. So it's all about having lots of different creature types and just going crazy, going stupid, getting a bunch of clones or copies or something like that. I don't remember how it did, but I think it was fun.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed it. I still have it, and I plan on playing it again soon.
Cool.
That sounded ominous.
No. I haven't upgraded it yet. I haven't done any upgrades. Nothing to worry about. I was going through all my decks recently and adding them to Architect. So I was just going through it and looking at all the cards in there. And I was like, oh yeah, I need to play this again.
Randy's like, I still have it, and watch your back.
You'll regret this day.
Yep.
And then Randy, which one did you make that?
I can't remember. I've been sitting here.
Zask, he's like an
Zask, the bug. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's Zask Skittering Swarm.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, God forbid they make anything that's easy to say.
It's
Yeah,
not
okay,
fantasy
But I
enough.
guess since it's insects, that's the point.
Now I remember. Yes. So Zask TLDR is you can play bugs and lands from your graveyard. I can't remember if he has any other abilities off the top of my head.
I think whenever they die, they go to the bottom of their deck.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
So they just keep churning through your deck. I
Yeah,
guess.
because you mill every time something dies.
Yeah, that's what it is. So I want to mill stuff
That's right.
in there, play it from the graveyard, and then when it dies, instead of going back to the graveyard, it goes back into the deck. So it's kind of doing things backwards. My graveyard is in my library, and my library is in my graveyard.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So, things to help with the ramp is like, anytime you would crack a land to find a different land, well, now you can play it again and just keep fetching things. And then it's just a bunch of bugs, and bugs have a pretty fun synergy. Scute Swarm?
Yep.
Scute Mob?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just a bunch of bugs that are just like, hey, the more bugs, the more better.
So what happened with this deck is that I think I played it at that Christmas, and then I had to take my backpack to use as like luggage or storage or something like that for Europe, and forgot to put it back in my backpack when I got back. And so it's been sitting in my closet. I forgot all about it until
Oh, no.
very recently. So I'm going to try to remember to bring it next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do.
Bringing Zax back.
If you don't play him, I will.
Which brings us to this upcoming Christmas.
And I've got a good one.
Just a couple months away. Ooh, boys, I have got a great one for this one. Okay, we decided another new rule for this one. Special rule. We are keeping the $50 budget, but the changed rule for this one is that any two monocolored legendary creatures can be treated as though they have partner. So as long as a creature is only one color in all of its abilities and its color identity, it can be treated as though it has partner. Now, we know, those of you in the audience who are saying that this is going to be insanely broken, insanely powerful, and yeah, that's exactly what we're hoping for.
That's the point. And that's also why there's a $50 budget.
That is exactly the point, and we are keeping the $50 budget.
Plus, I think we said nobody could run, what's her name? The
Sakashima.
That's right.
Yeah, you're not allowed to run Sakashima. Did we say either version of Sakashima?
Neither version of Sakashima.
Neither version of Sakashima. You are not allowed to just straight up have a clone in the command zone. But guys, I'm super excited.
yeah.
My deck is already built, and it's just waiting for a happy gift recipient.
Mm-hmm. Mine's almost put together. I need to cut like 25 cards, but which is going to take me months.
I have my commanders picked out and kind of like compiling stuff. I'm probably going to pull a lot from my currently owned collection right now. But man, I really want to reveal it, but I guess we'll wait.
I know. I want to reveal mine too so bad.
Let's just do it here, live on the podcast.
No.
Just for the viewers.
No. Maybe that'll be
Follow-up.
our pilot premiere spell table game. Maybe we'll do a gameplay video.
Okay.
Derek, any trash talk, any smack talk you want to do for this upcoming Christmas deck?
See, I want to say it's good, but I think it'll be good. I'm going for a really wacky idea, and I don't know if it's more whack or if it's actually going to be a cool idea. So I don't want to get too excited yet.
I just want to say, if you thought Arden and Rogak was fast, you have no idea.
Oh my lord. Okay. Both Randy's commanders are 0 cost and 1 cost.
Rograk and Rograk.
So just on turn 1, he's going to play both commanders.
No, Ragavan and
Ragavan
Konda or something.
Isn't Ragavan
Yeah.
double our budget?
Yes.
The one
Oh,
card.
that's true. $50 budget. Good point, Randy. Good
Yeah, I
point.
think he's like $90. I don't think so. Especially since
Yeah.
we're giving it away.
For any Magic players out there, I so highly recommend the Secret Santa activity. Like we mentioned earlier, it has us examine the other player's play style and what we know they like and what we think they could improve on. And it has us thinking about what that person might like to see or how they could grow. Yeah. It also means that in the gameplay itself, you're often happy with anybody who wins. And we talked about this several episodes ago, that it's really fun to just trade decks or to play decks that other people have built for a lot of reasons. You're going to get to see into the mind of your deck builder and think about how they build decks. And also, the thrill of winning is going to be more common because you could get the thrill of winning from winning, or you can obtain that thrill watching your deck win, watching the deck that you built pop off, even though someone else is piloting it. It is a huge confidence boost to see that whatever you built did something great.
Yeah. Honestly, I like it more than winning. To get so excited, no one's ever seen it, I give it to someone else, and then they win with it. That's just, I like,
Just to see the look on their face at every new draw. You know, every time it's their draw step, it's, ooh, what card's it going to be? Ooh, I'm so excited to see what this can do.
Yeah.
For the record,
Yeah.
I like winning more.
Shocker.
I had no idea.
Stop the presses.
Any last comments about Secret Santa? Again, I just love it.
Yeah, no, I think it's
Yeah.
a great thing that we do. I like it too.
Yeah.
In addition to Secret Santa, we do occasionally do deck building challenges. Maybe we have read something on Reddit, or we've seen a YouTube video, or we just have an idea within our meta where we say, what if we did this? Usually we'll set a date 2 or 3 months in advance, and we'll say, okay, everybody try to have your decks ready by this time, and then the next time we play, we'll debut those decks together. I think last year we did probably our most wild challenge so far, which was any 2 legends have partner.
Yeah.
And it does not matter what their rarity is, how many colors they are. We just said any 2 legends have partner.
Full on YOLO.
That was an insane game. I want to go first about mine. I mentioned earlier that I had dismantled the Vega Elegith deck, and it's because Vega was one of my partners for this deck building challenge. I paired Vega with Prosper Tomebound. Vega allows you to draw a card whenever you play a card from exile. Prosper has an effect that says at the end of your turn, you put a card in exile, and then you can play it your next turn. And he also says that whenever you play any card from exile, you create a treasure token. So with those two cards, with those two commanders, anytime I played a card from exile, I would both draw a card and create a treasure token. The value was absolutely insane, and I pretty quickly became arch enemy for that game.
Absolutely,
Yeah, it was one of the sickest things I've ever seen. In like a disgust way, not like an impressed way.
What?
It was...
I did put Jaleva in that deck.
There were war crimes.
So that is my most evil deck, and it breaks all the rules. It does things that Derek hates, and it is just very, very powerful. So I don't think I've ever played that deck since, just because I know that the target will be on my back for it.
Yeah.
Just Prosper, just a tiefling warlock and his little owl buddy.
Yeah, I regret showing you what Vega could do.
Yeah, it was amazing. Derek, tell us about yours.
So I made Feather and Ivy. Feather lets me cast instants and sorceries, or just instants?
I don't remember.
I think it's just instant.
So she's red-white, and...
Oh, it's instant or sorcery, yeah.
Okay, yeah, instant sorcery. You cast it, and then she exiles it and puts it back in your hand at the end of the turn instead of it going to your graveyard. Ivy says whenever a spell targets something else, it also affects her.
I think that's what it is, yeah.
So the idea would be, like, I buff up Feather, and then Ivy gets the free boost for nothing. So the idea was adding green to Feather for, like, the pump spells that are real cheap. Green gets a +3/+3 for whatever.
Yeah.
And then use blue for card draw and protection with counterspells. And it was pretty cool. I liked it a lot. I ended up taking it apart. So what actually, in reality, would happen is I'd get all the red-white cards at the very top and all the green-blue cards at the bottom, and I would never see them interact with each other. And I ended up taking Feather and Ivy apart to build a deck I'll talk about later.
Ooh, okay. Randy, tell us about yours.
I combined two of my favorite things, which is ETB effects, enter the battlefield, and tokens. So I did Brago, King Eternal, and Girid, Conclave, Exile. So Brago says when it deals damage, you can bounce, which is to basically remove the card from the game, basically, and then you bring it back in, so it triggers ETB effects again. And Girid says whenever he enters the battlefield, create a 4/4 Rhino with Trample, and then when he attacks, populate. And populate is basically create a token that's a copy of a creature that I control. So it's just going to be a bunch of tokens. Everything that enters is making tokens. Kind of going to go crazy pretty quick.
Yeah, that was another deck that had the instant army in a can problem.
Yeah.
Right, you call it a problem. It's a feature.
Well, problem for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty much everything, I think, if it doesn't enter and make a token, then it's a clone so that I can clone the ones that are good. But yeah, I remember looking at these two and just thinking, like, man, if only Girid had blue, or vice versa, if only Brago had, red and green, just a match made in heaven.
Yeah, that was kind of what this deck building challenge was all about. What if the commander you wanted had access to more colors?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Benjamin, tell us about yours. I'm still amazed at yours. It was wild.
Yeah, and it's funny because compared to all of y'all's, I felt like it was really underpowered. It took a lot to get set up and then was easy to defend against. But it was fun because it was a great callback. So one of my earliest commander deck was a Rafik of the mini deck. Rafik says that if you attack with only one creature, it gets +1/+1 and double strike. And Ishin is a newer commanders that I partnered with Rafik here, and he says if attacking with a creature causes an ability to trigger, it triggers an additional time. So what I did is I basically put in every single effect that had Exalted, which is the whenever a creature attacks alone, it gets +1/+1, or any trigger from creatures attacking alone. So there were some creatures that say, hey, whenever you attack alone, it gets lifelink. Whenever you attack alone, deals the damage to something. And I kind of added all of these cards into one deck so that whenever you attack, probably with Rafik, that it's going to trigger 15 +1/+1 effects and get double strike and get trample and deal 2 damage to something, and and all this stuff. And so it's really fun. It's certainly, you get your stuff going and you're like, when I attack with this, it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about the problem that Randy has, which is I don't want to be open, because you only had to attack with 1 creature. And so that was nice. You could leave everything on defense, swing in with a giant monster, and still have 10 creatures held back to defend. It was fun. I certainly enjoyed it. I still have it. It ended up not being as strong as the other ones, so it's more of a just for fun. And because it's totally illegal, because it's 5 colors, I don't get a chance to play it as often.
I was amazed personally with that deck of all the things that weren't creatures that didn't have to attack that had attack triggers.
Yeah.
So you had a couple of curses in there, like I think it was Curse of Predation or something.
Oh yeah, it puts +1/+1 counter.
It puts a +1/+1 counter on any creature that attacks that player.
Yeah.
So you could say, hey, Ishin is going to trigger when Derek attacks Travis.
Right.
That means that Derek, if you swing at Travis here, he'll get +2/+2.
And I'll do it.
and he would do it, absolutely. There were just a lot of cool cards in there that I did not think Ishin would go off with, that he did, and it was just really cool.
Yep, Curse of Bounty does that. Curse of Greed, I think.
Curse of Verbosity is the card draw one.
Yep. Oh, Curse of Opulence is the one where you get a
The gold token one.
And so, yeah, you're right. There's a bunch of curses that trigger on either a creature attacking or a player being attacked that you can redirect. Hey, if you just attack over there, you get a bunch of bonuses. And so do I. But we'll ignore that.
And with Ishin, it's you get twice the bonuses.
Right. Attack them, you'll get 2 cards, and I'll get 2 cards.
Yeah, it's really cool. That was one of our deck building challenges. Again, not related to Secret Santa, just like go off the rails. How big, how crazy can you do if there are no rules?
Yeah.
We did another one this year that we haven't yet had the battle for, but all of the decks are made, and we called it our 3-color challenge. We kind of went around each one of us and gave that person a color identity. What color do we think that person uses the most, or what color do we think has that person's personality? Derek was assigned green, Benjamin was assigned black, Randy was assigned white, and I was assigned red. And then the deck building challenge was that we each build the deck of the other player's colors. So we weren't allowed to use the one color that we were assigned. So Benjamin loves to include black in all of his decks. Yep. And he was assigned black as his color. Well, for this deck, you're not allowed to use it. He had to use green, white, and red. Yeah. And the same was true for everybody else. So that left Derek with white, black, red. That left Benjamin with white, red, green. That left Randy with red, black, green. And me with white, black, green. Those decks are made, but we haven't had our battle yet. And we plan to update you once that battle has happened, where we'll talk about each of those decks and how they performed. We are in the middle of one other challenge right now, and we got this idea from an episode of Shuffle Up and Play on Tolarian Community College, where they did a secret commander, where basically you roll up to the game, you put your commander face down in the command zone, you don't reveal it until you play it, until you cast it in the game. We made some adjustments to this. It is a secret commander. We decided that all of them had to be 5 mana value, and that we would swap them for their first play. Mm-hmm. That means that we would trade with the other players for the first game. And because we all know that they cost 5 mana value, that they cost 5 mana, we're just going to house rule it so that once you have 5 mana, you can cast your secret commander without knowing who that commander is yet. There was no budget restriction for this. We plan on just doing the swap just for the game, but then each person keeps those decks. And my deck is for this one is ready also, guys.
Yep, my deck's ready for this one too.
I thought I was going to have to completely redo it, but I have a backup deck just waiting the whole time, and I've been wanting to make it, so this is its time to shine.
Nice.
All right, perfect.
Mine's built.
Randy, you have this one ready?
Yeah, mine's ready. I'm looking at it, and I'm like, is this going to work? I don't know. I'm a little unsure of this deck. Not fun to hear, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, this one was as long as it's 5 mana value, and it can be cast once you have 5 mana. But that was the only rule.
I was going to ask, was there a stipulation that it can't be like Massacre Girl?
No.
Okay, I was just thinking it'd be really messed up you play 5, you have this whole board state, you play your 5, and then it's like, no, I killed my board.
Oh my god.
I did
That would
that.
be crazy.
I thought that'd be really funny.
Somebody's 5 CMC card is Child of Alara.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe we should make a rule of like no board wipe.
No whoops. My 5 CMC card is Megiddo the Lion.
Yeah, I think you can have a board wipe in the 99, but not for your commander. That's messed up.
No, but that's pretty funny though.
Especially if you mainly hurt yourself.
Now that you've said it, surely you wouldn't do it, right?
No. I was
still a
just
secret.
thinking about this. No. I wouldn't.
That is funny, dude.
It just popped in my head while we were talking, and I was like, man, that'd be messed up. If you play it and then it somehow hurts you more.
Right.
You know, I was like, oh my god, what if someone's board wiped and they hurt themselves?
Yeah.
Anyway, no, Massacre Gorilla is not, and it has never been my idea for that. Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything else. Yeah, you're safe. Don't worry.
Okay, so listeners, that's what we do to keep Magic fun. We play year-round Magic, and usually we're buying new cards, we're buying the new commander decks as they come out, so there's plenty of things to keep our games interesting. But this is something that our meta does specifically that we really enjoy. If you want more information about how we do Secret Santa, or if you want to suggest other deck building challenges for us, we're always up for new building challenges and exploring this great game. And that brings us to our recurring segment, News from the Warfront. Beep, beep. All right, here we go. It's another mostly Magic post, but it brings up a situation that I thought was just really odd. This is from our EDH. He says, I'm new to Magic as of last month. We have a 1-month-old player here. I've really been enjoying doing research and watching YouTube videos and getting deeper understandings of gameplay strategies, card synergies, etc. I liked this post because just last week, you guys talked about how to get good, how to learn, how to really dive deep into a game. This person's 1 month into Magic, and they're doing all of those things. Research, YouTube videos, exposing themselves to cards, new mechanics. And they said, listen, I get that this game has a high learning curve, but I'm learning a lot really fast. And then he brings us into this weird situation that he has with his friend. He says, one of the people who brought me into Magic showed me Commander, and it is now my preferred way of playing. I like deck brewing, and most of what I've done has been deck upgrading. They bought the Flying Precon. This was a starter Commander deck. It uses Thopters and a lot of flying creatures. He said, my problem is, the friend who introduced me to playing makes me not want to play. He says, I've added some cards, I've upgraded a deck, it performs well, I've won one game and lost the other. So I guess maybe one of their first times they played twice. Next session, my friend brings a new deck, plays a combo that lets him win fairly early in the game. Now he's playing yet another new deck that churns out creature tokens faster and stronger than I can handle. They make a comment about always playing Mimic Vat. I thought that was funny because when I was a new player, I thought this card was cheap and super powerful also, but now doesn't really worry me a lot. So this player thinks Mimic Vat is really powerful. But the other thing that they mentioned about this other player, their friend who got them into gaming, specifically made all of his removal things to wipe out flying, knowing that he has a deck full of Thopters and bird flying tokens. Mm-hmm. I've played this deck several times. He always wins the same way. Even if I look through the battle and look through all my cards and things like that, there's no way for me to do anything. He says he combos turn 3 or 4, and he doesn't know why he's here. There's not much left in the post. He says, I've expressed that it's not fun playing against a deck that I can't win, and the friend comes back by saying, hey, it's not fully optimized, my deck has weaknesses, but this new player says, listen, maybe they do, but it seems fortified specifically against my deck, even though the friend insists that it's not. I don't know what to do. I don't know if it's me not being good enough at the game, or if I'm being a bad sport about losing, or what. I don't feel like playing when I know he's going to do the same thing he always does and I always lose. What's the point? He says I also want to build a deck that's quote-unquote against his, and maybe prove myself. Tell me if I'm being unfun and need to learn more, or what else I should do.
I do think that learning more is always a good solution.
Yeah.
But at this point, of course, we always suggest that you discuss things first, use the I statements and or I messages and compliment sandwiches and all of that. But it sounds like this person has already talked to their friend, and their friend just says,
Yeah, it sounds like they tried.
friend just says, get good. So first thing I would suggest is go listen to our last episode about how to get good. And one of the things this person has already suggested, which is, hey, what if they make a deck that's against their deck? Like, this is part of the early meta gaming where people start, hey, I recognize that this is a common strategy, so I need to start doing things that are going to counter what my friend is doing. And one thing that I would recommend specifically is play counter spells. If your friend is going all in on a combo deck that's going too fast, then you're playing a blue deck, right? The blue-white flyer deck has room for counter spells where you can get a couple, and then when he goes to play his combo, he's not ready for it because, you know, he thinks you're a new player.
Yeah, he thinks you're a precious baby. Knock him out.
Just wait for him to play his combo piece. You say, counter spell, and then...
Even if it's just cancel, wouldn't that be so funny? To knock him out with a cancel? Just to Kimbe Matumbo, no.
Right? And then...
Not in my
and then
house.
just enjoy the look on his face when you're sitting there watching him because you just canceled his big play, and then continue to swing in with your flyers. So I think that's something I would do if I were you. Is hey, if you want to prove yourself, that's an easy way to get good is to start metagaming. You know the decks he plays, so start making your decks to counter what he plays. That's a normal part of metagame development. We've talked about it many times on this show, and I do think that's a great way for this person to respond here.
I have a problem. Maybe you guys can help me. I've recently got into boxing for about a month, and I've been playing against this guy named Mike Tyson. Every time he beats the life out of me, and he says he has plenty of weaknesses, but he'll throw a hit so hard that I actually shit my pants, and I'm not really sure what to do anymore.
Get good. Episode 11.
I don't know how to get good. Maybe he could just punch
work out
slower, or I don't know.
Spend more money.
I'm agreeing with what Derek's trying to say.
Yeah.
When I was reading this, it made me think that, okay, this guy, the poster, is playing a precon with maybe a handful of upgrades.
Yeah.
So that's like a power level 5, I think is safe to say. You know, it's pretty mid. And, I mean, even going up against what could be like a 7 is a big, step. But doing 20 mana turn 3, this dude sounds like he bust out a CEDH deck against a precon. And to me, the friend sounds pretty immature.
I want to interrupt. I would take this person's assessment of his friend's deck with a grain of salt.
True. Okay.
Because he's new.
Maybe not 20, but I mean, even half that 10 mana on turn 3 or 4 is a pretty strong ramp package he's got going on.
Yeah. And
I do agree with you. I think I kind of interrupted, but you had mentioned that this friend is clearly overpowered to deal with a 1 month long player.
Yeah, it's like, if I took one of my current decks and, time traveled back and fought myself when I just bought the Commander Legends...
Commander Anthology 2.
What was it? Anthology, yeah. And it's like, oh, I got this $50 Commander deck. And I'm like, okay, let's see how it goes up against my $800...
I'm about to ruin this kid's whole day.
Darian deck, Darian's
I'm about
pretty...
to make this kid never want to play again, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's immature on
it seems pathetic.
That friend's part. Yeah, like you're getting salty over losing to a $50 deck. Like it's a game.
He mentions that this friend has removal that specifically targets flying creatures.
Yeah.
I do think that's messed up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If your friend has been playing for a long time, he really shouldn't have Plummet in his deck.
Now, I will say this: if he's got like
Right.
Silk Lash Spider,
He should know
if
better.
he's got Silk Lash Spider or things like that, Hurricane.
Whip Tongue Hydra.
Yeah, like I play those in decks sometimes if they fit the theme, or I'm looking for one more thing and they just happen to be kind of on curve or what I'm doing. So I'm not gonna say that no specifically targeting flying is okay, but like you're right. If it's a plummet or what's the one that's like creature with flying or an enchantment or artifact.
There's like 4 different versions
Yeah,
of it.
like if
Yeah.
it
Crushing
Plummet,
Vines.
bring down.
Crushing Vines is the one I'm
That's
thinking
one.
of. Yeah. Like if he's playing
Yeah,
cards
Crushing
like
Vines.
that, and he's clearly an experienced player that should know that those cards just generally don't see play. Yes, he's metagaming against your precon, and that I agree. That's pretty messed up.
2 other things I wanted to suggest. One, I get that you're new and you want to keep playing that deck and get good, but maybe ask to borrow one of his more powerful decks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that way you're on an even footing. His 8 versus another one of his 8s.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And that might be a good thing. Or listen to our podcast and learn how to play with strangers. Find new
It came
people.
up in the comments a lot for this post that if you can, play 4-player games.
Yes.
Playing 1v1 Commander, like, it's not awful, but there really is an entire dimension of this game that I think is fixed with multiple players.
Yeah.
Even decks that do have disparate power level, that can be policed with multiple players.
I mean, yeah, we just talked about the Rogak and Arden. 1v1,
Yeah.
that deck's going to wreck, a little bit slower control deck, I feel like a lot of time because it's just so much faster.
Right.
So, but having 4 people, having some other people that may have more powerful decks that can match his, he's going to have to reassess the threat at the board.
Right.
Or at the table.
Yeah. I feel like I have a lot of decks like that where, like Ragavan, for example, 1v1, that's going to feel pretty awful. You play your turn 1 tap land, I play my commander. You play your turn 2 ramp piece, I hit you for 2 and steal a card. And it's like,
Yeah.
snowball out of control there. And so, yeah, Rograk Arden, there's lots of the decks like that. I think you're right on point there with this. If you had a few friends with a Doomblade and a counterspell and some pressure, then this person can't just freely set up and go off against your flying deck.
Yeah. Derek, anything you want to add here?
No, I just feel like this guy sounds like kind of a jerk. I mean, I would definitely realize in a game, oh, this is a precon because this costs 6 mana for garbage. And to
It's like, his deck has a Sarah Angel in it.
yeah,
Right? Yeah.
What?
I better Crushing Vines
Yeah,
that.
what are... I better Crushing Vines is Sarah Angel.
It's pathetic, man. Like, I don't know. I don't feel good about myself beating down someone who's in a much worse place than me. It just seems gross.
I think the person needs to also go listen to some of our earlier stuff about, how to be a good friend.
How to touch grass.
Yeah, how to be a good friend at the table, how to...
How to invite a new player in.
Yes,
and
how to teach
things
your
like
game. You don't teach it by
This is
bashing
a-
them over the head.
Yep.
Unless you're Benjamin. Benjamin likes being the underdog. You want
Oh,
your head bashed
absolutely.
in, right?
Yes. If you want me to get hooked on a game, sell me on the game, show me that it's fun, and then beat me. Because then I'm like, oh, I got to get better. And then I'll throw myself into it. So, yeah, that's a good call.
Benjamin, I feel like I can make a game myself. Like, I could design the game and you would still beat me.
There was something that mentioned before, and I do want to reiterate it. Play some of this guy's own decks against him. That is obviously gonna even your power level because you're gonna be playing with his level of deck building instead of your own. And at this point in your career versus his career, he probably is the better deck builder. So play his decks and learn from what he's created.
Challenge him to, like, he plays your deck, you play his deck, and see how it feels.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yep. And you can also, as you're playing his decks, you'll start to see like, oh, here are some weaknesses. I didn't realize that it actually takes this careful setup to reach this board state. Now I see that it actually is easy to disrupt. Like, if he's telling you his deck has weaknesses but doesn't tell you what the weaknesses are, well, that kind of sucks, right? But by playing it, you might see those weaknesses where you didn't see them before. And you can also learn strategies and stuff that can help you with your own decks. So, yeah, good job, Derek, on recommending that. I think that's a great idea.
All right. Any last comments for another great episode? Before Benjamin's words of wisdom.
Go for it.
Take it away.
Okay, so we've talked about making game nights interesting with the meta that you have and developing new and fun ideas to keep things interesting. But you know what? This works even better in your interpersonal relationships, especially with that significant other. It can be really fun and exciting in the early days of a relationship to just explore the game pieces you have. But over time, as you develop that deeper relationship and you talk and you get comfortable, sometimes the excitement wears off. You get into a rut, and it can be tempting to want to move on or take what you have for granted. And that's a great time. Instead of letting that relationship fall apart, try something new, challenge each other, find a new twist on an old favorite, right? Trying that new restaurant down the street, trying a new game, right? There's
Try out role playing.
Yes.
Adding toys.
Don't step out, step up.
So when you have something that's grown stale in your life, or a chance to grow deeper. Yes, go deeper. We've decided to go deeper with each other, with our meta, and of course we've told you all sorts of ways to do that, right? Gifts and activities and teaching each other and all these things.
Solo play, team play.
But you can do that in so many areas of your life.
Adding friends.
Yep. I've heard an interesting quote recently that I think applies here, and that is, only boring people get bored.
Hey, that's good.
So take
Feel
that with
attacked.
you to your next thing and have a fun life.
Benjamin, you tried to steal back the words of wisdom, and it ended up backfiring.
Yeah, 2 weeks was too long to let it go.
Whenever Derek says toys, you got to put a little T-Rex toy in there.
Those were great words of wisdom, very applicable. Just go back and re-listen to it and ignore me and Derek snickering in the background.
Don't ignore us. Give us
Yeah,
our
ignore
due.
them. They do nothing.
Remember always that you can contact us directly by leaving comments either on YouTube, Spotify, or any of the audio mediums that you enjoy this podcast with. You can also contact us through email at mymythicalmeta@eldoradogaming.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you can have many years of enjoyment with your friends and with your game. Good night.
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 Later.
This episode was sponsored by Eldorado Gaming. Use the promo code META for 10% off your order. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. This episode was edited by me, Travis Konishek, and our intro and outro music is by Tyler Heath of the Oh Hellos.